Sorry, good morning, 9:30. I'll call the meeting to order. Before we get going, I'll just check online here with Councillor Dean and Councillor Burrows, make sure you guys can hear us and see us. Any good from Al?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Down to adoption of the agenda. I know there's a couple items from administration I'd like to add.
Mr. Reeve and members of council, if we could add in camera a CAO report. There's a couple of issues that have arisen, the legal matter, intermunicipal relations, and organizational wellness and personnel in terms of the applicable FOIP provisions.
Okay, so we'll put that 12.2 a CAO report in closed meeting, and I'd like to add under 12.3 on closed meeting, organizational kind of personnel review, just to have a discussion on some of the projects and stuff that we have on the go. And just checking with Corinne, do we need the FOIP references currently, or can we add those after?
We can do that when we go into closed.
Okay. With that, if anything else from council, any other additions? Not seeing any. Councillor Kuchen.
I will make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Thank you, sir. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Just looking online. John's in favor. Councillor Dean. Not hearing anything. Still have a quorum. We are good. Moving on. Adoption of the minutes. Council meeting September 25th. Any additions, omissions, anything anybody see there they need to have a discussion on? Not seeing any. If I can get a motion to accept the meeting minutes. Councillor Prestige.
Make a motion to accept the council meeting minutes of September 25th, 24, as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, Al. And that one's carried. We got nothing in the, still early for our delegation to 10, so let's move to 8.1, Highway 661 and Township Road 628 intersection traffic control.
Mr. Reeve, that will be addressed by Paul, our new manager of infrastructure services.
Thank you.
Morning, Paul.
Morning, Your Worship and members of council. My item today is regarding the stop sign on Highway 661, intersecting with Township Road 628 in Fort Assiniboine. Back in 2023, Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors, or ATEC, completed the resurfacing of Highway 661 through Fort Assiniboine, and as part of that project, they changed the stop sign configuration at that intersection as well. Since then, administration has heard from different stakeholders and local gravel haul operators. On one hand, to revert to the previous setup, and on the other, stay the current setup. As such, administration has made the request to ATEC to hold off on the previous request to revert to allow time for additional considerations as follows. So ATEC is the road authority on Highway 661, including this intersection. B, ATEC has implemented a change to the traffic control setup based on engineering assessment. And C, county has received opposing views on the matter. It is therefore recommended that county shall cancel the previous request to ATEC to revert the traffic control setup at this intersection. Administration will forward any stakeholder concerns to ATEC for ATEC's information only.
Thank you. Questions, comments from council?
If I could just add, Mr.
Benito.
Reeve. The other important consideration here is, there will always be road users that have a view it should be set up one way or it should be set up another way, but so that's always difficult. But the real important point here is that the way it is set up right now meets the typical safety standards used by Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors. So if we put in a request that alters that, if there was a future motor vehicle accident there, it exposes us to some potential liability by being exposed to being named in a lawsuit. And so we're, from a liability management perspective, we are in the best position to respect that Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors are the highway authority, and they should govern the postage of signs. So that's another reason behind the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Not seeing Councillor Williams?
The only concern, I see the stakeholders out of the valley that are trying to keep it how it is. It makes way more sense for gravel trucks not to stop at a stop sign on a hill, go through town, but, there is a lot of speed issues with trucks by not stopping there as well through town. So that was the original reason why lots of people were coming to me and saying that they wanted this change. So that was where that kind of came from. But I guess we could just get on the operators more than trying to just make them stop.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, through the chair to Paul. So what Councillor Williams brought up about the speed issue then is maybe that is an enforcement problem rather than a signage problem.
Yeah, you've got two issues with managing traffic. One is the signage and the directions you're providing to drivers. And of course, the other problem is whether or not they're adhering to them, whether it's a stop sign or speed or whatever. There's always the two aspects that have to come together if there's a problem.
Okay, so then my second question to that would be, is that I think we need to have messaging to our residents that addresses the speeding problem, because obviously we have the right answer for the signage.
Correct.
Any other discussion, comments? Anybody want to make a motion? Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that council directs administration to send cancellation of the previous request to Alberta Transportation regarding changing the traffic control on Highway 661 and Township Road 628 intersection.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on that motion? Not seeing any. Public question, all in favor? And that one's carried. 9.1, new business. Draft amended policy 4301, operations of transfer stations.
And this will be addressed by our airport manager, Steve.
Yes, Keita?
Burrows has his hand up, or
Councillor Burrows has his hand.
it was up there for a second.
It's probably for voting on the motion. Sorry, Councillor Burrows, if I missed a question from you there. I didn't see the hand up sooner.
No, Mr. Chair, that was actually the vote, so.
Okay.
And I should have said Steve and Rob.
Morning, Steve.
Morning, members of council. On September 18th, 24, the Governance and Policy Committee forwarded the draft amended policy to council for your consideration. The draft amended policy presented serves as a framework that guides decision-making, sets expectations, and ensures consistency when administrating operations at transfer sites. These policies provide direction for all employees to help understand their role and responsibility when participating in operations at a transfer site. This policy also includes direction on the take it or leave it areas. With a more defined direction, this will assist employees in maintaining the areas. It also includes changing the hours of operation to allow employees to have 2 consecutive days off, which will enhance organizational effectiveness and further align with our organizational goals of providing a better work environment for current and future employees at transfer sites. Administration recommends the policy take effect November 1st. This will give us time for advertising and creating signs to change, to reflect the changes in the draft policy. For funding, we have $1,000 that we can spend for updating all our signs and for advertising and whatnot, so everybody has an idea of what's upcoming. And we recommend that council adopt amended policy 4301, operations of transfer sites, effective November 1st, 2024.
Thank you. I know we had discussion this at G&B. Any further comments or discussion from council? Online. Not seeing any comments in there. Councillor Prestige?
I'll make a motion that council adopt amended policy 4301, operation and transfer station, effective November 1st, 2024.
Thank you, Counselor. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you, Al. Thank you, John. It's passed. 9.2, Council Professional Development Overage Request. Mr. Benedetto, you want to run through this, or I can take this one if you want?
Sure, that's really the practice of council has been to reallocate professional development funds if a member of council has the opportunity to participate in additional professional development opportunities. And certainly from a budget perspective, we're in good shape with the overall council budget for professional development being below, and it's certainly projected at this point at the end of the year to be well within, because we're at roughly, in round numbers, $68,000, and there's a total budget of $105. So there's no difficulty in terms of accommodating this from an overall fiscal perspective. It's still in line with your budgeted expenditures, but it is appropriate that council approves the additional attendance of Councillor Dean as recommended with respect to the small modular reactors and greenhouse gas technologies conference in October this month.
And with, I think year over year, we usually come in under our budgeted amount for that, so I don't see an issue because we have some councillors that utilize it more than others. So, Councillor Coogan?
Well, I think that through the chair to council and the public in general, I think one of the things that we have to recognize here is that this is part of our responsibility to try to figure out how we, go after economic development in our area. So what happens at the conferences like this is that we get an understanding of how we can position ourselves as a municipality for further development. So the question, I've always been questioned on these conferences, why we attend and why we're there. So I think it's important for the public to understand that if we want to generate more revenue in this municipality, not just from the residential taxes, we have to really be looking at what is our future going to look like and what kind of development is going to happen here. So it's just a comment that I want to insert into the conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair, as councillors, we're asked to make decisions on a lot of important subjects. And by going to these conferences, we can educate ourselves so we can make the important decisions. I find with myself, once I go to these conferences and you learn what is happening, you can come back and make a way more educated decision, which helps the municipality.
Okay. And I definitely agree. There is definitely value and resource to going to these. And to get back to the motion, where we're at here, we do have allocated for each councillor for it, and as specified, Councillor Dean's going to be, and this I believe is the first time he's come in 3 years that we're going to be going over. Typically he's under. Typically most of us are under. So just looking for an approval. Councillor Williams.
I'll make a motion that council approves Councillor Dean to attend the small modular reactors and greenhouse gas technologies conferences in October 2024.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Just looking for Councillor Burrows. Thank you, Al. Okay, that one's approved. 9.3, corporate planning cycle.
Mr. Reeve and members of council, happy to present to you this morning integrated corporate and fiscal management planning cycle that we have been working on developing with with input from the members of the senior management team as well as our extended management group. And really having a integrated corporate and fiscal management planning cycle is a foundational management tool. We have some of the elements in place, but others have to be developed. And some of these processes are somewhat ad hoc at this time. And the timing of some of the processes do not appear to be aligned with the budget development process. And there are certainly benefits of achieving that. So also the development of a corporate planning framework is identified as a priority initiative in your corporate strategic plan under the strategic priority of organizational excellence. Typically, a corporate planning cycle is aligned with the budget cycle, so resource requirements can be addressed in a timely manner, and it provides a consistent understanding of strategic priorities so that there is in fact alignment between council and the administration in terms of what the outcomes are to be, and the processes, and equally important is the setting of priorities. So the adoption of a cycle, of having it in place in the organization, sets specific timeframes where council can anticipate being updated on your corporate strategic plan. And often those updates further down the road would also be utilized to be reporting results to the community, because it works very well of updating council and also using that information to update the community. So I just would like to walk you through the cycle and just touch on the various elements. I think I'll use this screen because less people have to pivot to see it. Oh, there's an issue with okay, what am I doing wrong?
You just washing out on the TV screen.
Yeah, it is washing out. So really, I'll just start at the top. And really, it starts during a council's term that there's an annual review in late Q1 or early Q2. And it's a different process in an election year because there's debrief and you really build the plan from the ground up. But starting on the left-hand side in Q1 or 2, there's an annual review where administration would present and develop a report to update council on the status of the various initiatives and where they're at. So with council and administration working through a facilitated strategic planning session, really looking at those strategic priorities when it's an annual review during the course of the term, you're just looking at what's changed and you have to make any adjustments to the plan. And of course, council initially, following election, adopts the overall community strategic priorities. Through Q2, then administration identifies strategies and budget requirements. And we've timed that also to be with financial variance report number 1. So we're reporting to you on the status of your strategic initiatives as well as where we're at financially. And then administration further updates the status of the overall community strategic priorities at the end of Q3. And that puts us in a position then to recommend budgets for you. So for example, if council identified at your annual strategic planning workshop that maybe you wanted to add back some greater beats to have a higher service level on your roads, or if you wanted some options for a higher level of an economic development program to attract further businesses and jobs and assessment growth, then we'd bring through the budget some options for you, saying if you added back some greater beats, here are the costs of equipment and labor. If you went with a more enhanced economic development program, what those levels would look like, what the deliverables would be, and the benefit to the community. So then you can consider that in conjunction with your overall budget, because it's aligned, so you're getting that information and you can make decisions about redirecting resources or placing higher priorities. So after you've adopted the budget and given us direction relative to different service levels or some things you identified you wanted us to evaluate, we would continue to work on the strategies and implement them. And then in Q1, again, after the budget and with the time that had passed since the earlier update, we'd be preparing an update for you again and then updating you on the status. And then the cycle starts over. Then in Q1, Q2, you're reviewing our report. The report that we prepare at the year end for you can also be repurposed and used to report results to the community. Because really, when a strategic planning cycle and a process becomes mature, the real strength is when you can start getting aligned with neighboring municipalities, with your school boards and other major stakeholders, so everybody's pulling the same direction in terms of your future view of the community. So those are some of the benefits. So we wanted to share with you the work that we have done in terms of developing this. I have to note the other part of the recommendation as well, as you receiving it for information, is it's to be implemented in phases over the next 24 months, because we don't have all of the elements there yet, but this gives a desired state of what we're working together to achieve, and have expectations and that very important touch points and interface between council and administration to make sure we're aligned and working toward the same objectives and outcomes. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you've got, but I've implemented this in a number of communities, and it produces a lot of benefits over time when it's fully implemented.
Hey, any discussion from council? Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, obviously, when you through the chair to Paul, when you develop this as a strategy, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into this.
Yes.
A tremendous amount of work. And, you know, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is the administrative capacity that exists here, because, you know, we have lost a lot of those positions. So how do you see that as being, I'm recognizing this as being a future planning tool for 24 months, but how do you see that as fitting into the ability, I guess, not to burn out the staff that we have to get to this point?
Well, through the chair, that's why we're recommending a phased implementation over 24 months. Like, for example, right now, where it talked about the variance reports, that's what we're striving to get to, that 2 variance reports to council, the one earlier in the year and then the one in conjunct with budget. I mean, in the ideal world, you'd be saying a quarterly variance report, but we're not there yet. So being mindful of the draw on resources, we've taken a phased approach and aligned in discussions with Denisha that would not generate extra work in terms of creating the variance reports, because that's where she's trying to get to generate those. So bringing those together, et cetera. And very clearly, and the exact point that you've raised, we've got some elements. There's others that we still have to further refine, and that's why we're suggesting this 24-month time frame, because there is a fair amount of work here. So there's more investment now to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the operation. The big benefit is with having specific timeframes where council knows that you're going to be looking at your strategic plan or you're getting updates. The real important part is that discussion, and make sure that council and the administration are aligned, that we're pursuing the same outcomes and the same priorities. Because if you have misalignment, you have some difficulties. So this process is meant to help facilitate that alignment between council and the administration, and ideally over time the community and other stakeholders.
Thank you.
I guess my question in regards to this, given, and I'm not against this, like having stuff like this and having the reporting, we need to be moving towards this, but if we have, we'll say, another CAO starting in, say, 2 months, 3 months, or whatever, if we end up putting a bunch of resources and effort into doing this and they decide that's not the direction they want to go, is this going to be a bunch, currently, especially with budget season and everything else coming up right now, is this something that we should be focusing on now, or should we maybe bump this back a little bit and start looking at this plan maybe Q1 of next year?
So it is bumped back by saying an implementation over the next 24 months. So I mean, really additional direct activities related to this with budget right now won't be happening. And so it is going to have to be implemented over a period of time to spread the work out. And that's very deliberate, recognizing a 24-month implementation. In the perfect world, it'd be nice to say this could be fully implemented before the end of the year and we could go through the whole cycle, but that's not our reality.
Councilor Goulden?
Well, through the chair to Paul, I guess to add to what Councillor Kush has said is that I think it is important for us, at least for me, to understand that this concept actually can be forwarded after this next election cycle, which is, after 24 months. So how does that work if we adopt that we actually have a motion on the books that adopts the concept of developing the strategy over that period of time, so that at least it's not completely tossed out, like you said, by the next CAO, which is completely possible. He may have a different approach to doing this. So how do we guarantee that? Because I do see the value in having a structure like this.
Well, you have received it for information. Now, the new CAO maybe makes some tweaks to it, but, the CAO has to have processes in place that facilitate the discussions between council and administration to make sure we're aligned. And if you don't have processes in place where that's achieved, that's problematic. And you're always trying to deliver services in the most cost-effective way possible. And that's where you have to have these discussions to make sure that we're optimizing the benefits to the community for the expenditures that we're placing on programs or services or maintaining infrastructure, et cetera. So yes, with the 24 months, the new CEO may want to make some adjustments, but you will absolutely have to have a process, something like this in place so that alignment occurs.
Okay. I guess with that, and kind of being cognizant of time, because we do have, Councillor Prestidge, I forgot your hand was up there.
Through the chair to Paul. Is this something that other municipalities use in some sort of way?
Yes, and I can tell you I've implemented it in a number of communities, and where it is, well, it's very beneficial for the municipal operation, but the true power is when you start collaborating with your school boards and other municipalities, and you have a shared vision and everybody's investing their resources to achieve that same vision. Now that's a mature model, and we're at a starting point here, so that would take some time, but absolutely, the answer is yes.
Any further discussion on this? Councillor Prestidge?
I'll make a motion that council accept as information the integrated corporate and fiscal management planning cycle be implemented in phases over 24 months.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. Other questions, all in favor? And that is carried. Should be able to do this next one quick. 9.4, letter of support for Wellspring.
Mr. Reeve and members of council, last week I was approached by the executive director with Wellspring, and he spoke to a number of success of their programs with the establishment of Women and Children's Shelter and some of the crisis lines, some real critical programs and services that they provide to the community. So they are looking at some additional expansions and some additional work. So their request is that the county would offer a letter of support in support of their programs. And really, these things all take money to make happen. So the letter of support would be used to pursue some granting opportunities that they have.
Okay, I think this is a pretty straightforward discussion on this one. Councillor Williams.
Make a motion that council directs administration to forward a letter of support to the Wellspring Family Resource and Crisis Center for their CMHC Women's and Children's Shelter and Traditional Housing Initiative Grant.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion?
Transitional. I said that wrong.
Any discussion on that motion? Not seeing any. Call the question, all in favor? It's carried, and that brings us to 10 o'clock. We do have an in-camera session for a delegation. I did see Mr. Glover walk by, so if I can get a motion to go into closed session under FOIP 17. Councillor Williams.
I can make a motion to go into closed session under FOIP 17.
Thank you, Councillor. With that, I'll call the question, all in favor? That is carried. Okay, coming into closed session, 12.1, Councillor Williams, you had a motion?
I will make a motion to accept Human Edge Global CAO recruitment update as information.
Thank you. Then I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. 12.2, Councillor Prestige.
Make a motion that council accept the CAO report as information.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? 12.3, Councillor Coogan.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the organizational and personnel review update as information.
Thank you. Again, call the question. All in favor? That brings us back up to 11.1, Councillor reports and questions. I'll start with Councillor Williams.
I attended last night the open house for land use bylaw, so that was pretty well attended. Really good conversation there. Happy to get to make it over there. There was some fires, so I left for about 10 minutes, but made it back. So that went really good. So it's nice when people show up for that. Just recently attended an Ag Society meeting. ICE in Fort Seymour, I think the plan's turned on October 21st. I think that's the plan there. So it should have ice. There'll be lots of happy skaters in that place. And then I had a couple of people brought this up, and I don't really know who looks after it or whatever, but they appreciated the ditch mowing that happened around Fort Seymour, but it was really early in the year. And then everything grew way higher than what it was when they mowed it. So they're having not lots of problems, but they're just lots of high grass on the sides of the roads, and we already paid for it to be mowed. So they were just kind of curious if we can mow later in the year just to get a little more bang for our buck. So I don't know who looks after that contract or whatever. But
I can answer that. I actually spoke with one of the individuals that had very legitimate concerns about the mowing being earlier in the year, so there was a lot of growth after. So we've looked at that, and we've also looked at that further. So in budget, we've actually got some recommendations for you about even changing the method of delivery of that service. But that is a valid concern where the cutting's got to be at a time where you don't end up with a bunch of growth at the end of the year, or you've either got to do that or do two cuts. So I dealt with, responded to, and actually personally talked to the one individual with the concerns. That contract's actually overseen by our ag services people, but we'll have some more information for you on that budget. That's a very legitimate concern, and we've addressed it, and we'll address it further.
perfect. Okay, thank you for that. That was all.
Any other questions, Councillor Williams? Councillor Prestige?
On the first, I attended the ICF joint signing agreement. And then on the 7th, attended the Pembina River District 3 zone meeting, which was fairly good. It was a fairly light meeting. But, good information. And that's it.
Any questions, Councillor Prestige? Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I guess after our last council meeting, the 26th, I made a presentation to our Economic Development Committee as to the status of our regional economic development strategy and overall planning at the request of the board there. I was then the next was the ICF agreement, joint signing. I attended that. Had some good conversation there. Then on the 4th, we were supposed to have a meeting with growth, but it was moved to the 8th, and in that particular meeting, we met with Carrie Ann Boychuk and Brad Hasback, who are Brad is the regional economic development specialist, and Carrie Ann is the one that oversees the way that our Rural Economic Development Alliance spends their money. And so we had a long conversation about, forward planning under the new circumstances where the government isn't really interested in funding the Rural Economic Development Alliances in the current model. One of the things that came out in that conversation is that it's becoming incredibly important for municipal councils to recognize the value of regional economic development. It will not happen in-house. It hasn't. The history is there, and this is coming from Carrie Ann, who is the government specialist on this. And so part of the reasoning for the way that they're approaching their funding model is they're looking at it from a completely different lens. And I think that given the circumstances of rural Alberta, she agreed that we do not put enough emphasis on economic development. And that is the only thing that is really going to, in the future, help us revitalize and get new investment into our communities. And it's a long game. It's not a 4-year cycle, it's a 20-year cycle. And so she gave me some interesting pointers on how to address that from a municipal budgeting perspective. And I'm hoping that I can work with Bert to bring that to the table at a GM meeting. On the 7th, I had the opportunity to go to the regional meeting, but I was asked by the Bicentennial Committee to attend the appreciation and media release for the finalization of the legacy project that Woodlands County actually participated in through their help with the bicentennial celebration. And I'm very pleased to announce that through all of the things that happened there is that we've now extended our positive reach right from Whitecourt. And I have to say thank you very much to Tara Baker. She's the deputy mayor for attending that. And we had some really good discussion on sitting down as economic development people that are trying to wade our way through this, to just sit down and see where we can work together. So I think that's part of what's very important for us to do in rebuilding some of the relationships and trying to figure out how we can empower each other rather than be at odds. And we had a really good discussion. We had the media there who took pictures, so you're going to see some stuff in the local papers about the value of that relationship. And then we had the land use bylaw meeting that went really well last night, I thought, despite the, I have to give Jones crew credit for establishing the way that they approached that particular situation. It was kind of an ad hoc thing that all of a sudden people wanted to have a different approach. And I think that you guys did a tremendous job of that. And I appreciate that, even though I noticed that I've got a lot of mail on my phone this morning, I'm gonna have to answer, so. That pretty much takes care of my
Any questions for Councillor Kulik? No? Guess my report, right after our last council meeting, myself and Councillor Burrows went down to Red Deer and attended the Alberta Unis Conference with the town of Whitecourt. They invited us to come along. A lot of good conversations back and forth between us and the town when we were down there, plus with MP Engineering, who's done a lot of projects up in the Fort Assiniboine and Goose Lake area, and kind of talked about some of the opportunities that they might be able to have to help us with some of our deficiencies in grant funding and projects. So put that information off to, I believe it was, can't remember, it's Paul Rod anyways, and Jeff at our ICF signing. So we'll see if that bears any fruit, but it'd be nice. Other thing, when we were sitting at the Alberta Munis, it was looking at the comparison between a lot of the resolutions they put out versus what we put out, and there is a lot of similarities for the asks on both sides, especially when it comes to healthcare and education, and trying to, I guess, get more for better services from the province. So was nice to see at least the similarities there, and hopefully, driving it from both committees, maybe the province will listen and do a little bit more. Attended the Orange Shirt Day on September 30th with Councillor Dean in Whitecourt. Very well attended. Good ceremony. Good conversations. The march through town. Very well attended again. Lots of people, and just the activities and stuff they had down at Festival Park. It was a great thing to be part of. We had the ICF signing. It's nice to be able to sit in a room with our counterparts and be able to shake hands and at least take some pictures there that way. So nobody ended up walking out of there with broken legs. It was a good event. Hopefully the media and the residents can appreciate the fact that we are trying to work together and trying to establish a new path forward. Made the zone meeting on Monday. After the Pembina zone meeting, we had ministers, kind of an MLA meet and greet after and a dinner. It was nice to get a bunch more personable FaceTime with some of the ministers. Minister McIver, our MLA, Mr. Long was there, Shane Getson was there, a couple others. Maybe be able to ask, not just ask, but have a little bit more of a smaller room and individuals and hear some of the other municipalities and the questions and comments and concerns that they were having, and they're bringing up to the municipalities and be able to be part of those conversations. So again, I'd like to thank the RMA for hosting that. It was, I personally believe that it has a lot of value to it. And I guess aside from that, we had the land use bylaw up in the fort. We were asked for some comments after from CTV, who made an appearance up there. Didn't realize they were coming, and hopefully I guess in the interview kind of captured the basis of the meeting and what we were at. So kind of put on the spot and didn't have a whole lot of prep time. I got the message walking into the hall that they were there. So, but overall, I know we residents up there who are probably watching this as well. I know there was a lot of hard questions, tough comments and stuff that came out of it, and I appreciate those from the public. We were doing this again tonight. We can't develop good policy and good plans that encompass what the municipality and the residents are looking for if we don't have those hard conversations with the residents and try to steer things in a direction that works for at least the majority of our constituents. So that's what I got. Again, we have a couple more land use open houses tonight in Whitecourt and tomorrow in Samo. So we'll see what else comes out of this. Any questions, comments? Not seeing it, if I can get a motion to accept council reports. Councillor Williams.
Make a motion to accept council reports as information.
Thank you, Councillor. Call the question, all in favor? That's carried. And bring this down to our final part here, 11.6, the in-camera CAO report.
Okay, the public report, very pleased due to the efforts of Jeff and our infrastructure team and our crews. They've been really trying to optimize what can be achieved to improve some of our high-need roads during the short remaining construction season. Very pleased that the Gibson and Westridge subdivisions have been pulverized and stabilizing the base has been completed. And the next year, surface treatment such as chip seal to protect the driving surface will be required. But we've heard also very positive feedback from some of the residents to the improvements. Range Road 120, that has continued to be challenging. It's been on a higher level of grading, and we've experimented with packing and also an application of calcium on some selected sections of the road have been completed. And the results at this point seem to be helping, and the results will be continued to be monitored along with some of the other pilot projects that were implemented with your support. Range Road 592, which is main access to Pine Meadows. The reworking of the surface and the placing a cold mix is underway and might even be completed by now. And I know one of my colleagues upstairs that lives there said it was a lot better to drive on. after some of the initial work. Another project, Blue Ridge Sidewalks, there's selective sidewalk panel replacement that's underway, subject to the weather holding out for us, to remove potential tripping hazards. It's being initiated. And of course, we need some good construction weather yet, but we're trying to get after that one as well. Another very important initiative that is occurring is the important topic of health and safety. The internal audit is well underway, and it's anticipated to be completed by the end of October. And of course, we have to achieve an overall score of 80% to meet the requirements to satisfy AMPSA and the other regulatory requirements. So there's focus in terms of getting that completed. This is the big one, and a huge consumer of resources at this time of year is budget development and evaluating potential multi-year approaches. And work is continuing to address the condition of our roads and other infrastructure, and with trying to address that and the other financial factors that are at play, this is placing significant demands on numerous staff. So we certainly appreciate council's understanding that this has to continue to be our top priority, and some of the other projects will have to be held in abeyance or rescheduled to accommodate getting the proper due diligence completed on the budget, because there was a 5-year plan that is been addressed, but we have to develop the plan going forward with you through our budget deliberations of, the next few fiscal years, and particularly given some of the challenges that we face. And then you've touched on it. I wanted to just comment on the land use bylaw last night. The public input session was very informative, but Joan's words were that they pivoted, and finding out some of the individuals there would prefer a little bit of an overview and a presentation of some of the information. So that was accomplished to meet their needs and their expectations. So Joan, to you and your team, thanks for being adaptable and working and adjusting to meet the public expectations. So certainly want to acknowledge that as well. But very, very well done. So with that, I'd be happy to respond to any council questions, Mr. Reeve.
I do actually I guess this is more of a comment for administration. Over the last little bit, and now I understand administration is taxed, they're busy. We've just been finding some of the events on our calendars haven't been populating. Now, again, I'm not trying to poke at administration, but if we end up finding that, say there's events coming up and there's stuff and administration doesn't have time to, run that through or send out the request on Outlook, if you guys would rather and let us know, I'm not, if the understanding is the council's gonna put it on ours, we'll put it on. If administration's, I did just wanna make sure that, whatever we're doing works, so both sides get the information. I know myself, I live off my calendar and the notifications that come up, and we'll say like the open house we had here on the 30th, it wasn't in there, and I know we had a discussion at council and I completely forgot about it, anticipating something was gonna come. And again, if they're not gonna come, or if you'd rather when we have these discussions at council about events or stuff coming up, or maybe the request is that we just put them in ours so it's done, if we can just establish that communication ahead of time to make things easier. That's just a comment.
Okay, well, I'll work with Corinne, and we'll clarify the process so everybody's got same understanding.
The process is easier at those times for some of these things for us that kind of come up on different open houses or different events for us to put them in. We can just take a minute and add them at that day in our phones, or if administration gonna put it, I just want to make sure that things aren't getting missed and that we're working with you guys to make sure that it goes to.
Corinne gave me the nod, so we'll just clarify the process. So
Devin?
I was just gonna add, the speed signs were installed in Fort Assiniboine as well. Anyone that was in the fort yesterday probably seen them. I think they just got put up, and I already got a couple of messages on them. So that was good. So I appreciate those are up and they look good. Hopefully they are respected.
Any other questions, comments, concerns to the CAO? Not seeing any, can I get a motion for the CAO report? Councillor Williams.
I'll make a motion that council accepts the CAO report as information.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Call the question, all in favor? And brings us to number 13, adjournment. Oh, sorry, I have Corinne is yelling
Did
at
council
us.
review 10.1 correspondence?
No.
Sorry, I missed 10.1. Before we adjourn, 10.1, any information items there that we need to discuss or look at? Councilor Williams?
I'll make a motion that council accepts correspondence and information items as circulated.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you for the point of order there, Brent. Call the question, all in favor? That's carried, and that brings us down to 13, adjournment. Councilor Prestige?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. No more discussion. Call the question, all in favor? We are adjourned at 10 after 12. Thank you, everybody, for your time.